Hey, Dan here again, and hopefully in the last video I convinced you about the benefits of starting to outsource. Well, if I didn't, I don't really care. I don't own an outsourcing company. It's your business, not mine. But if you're sold on this concept of having someone help you with some or a lot of the work on your plate, then I want to go through a lot of tips in this video on how to do it right, because I have made every single mistake you can possibly make while outsourcing. Well, I guess I haven't given anyone like my credit card yet who's stolen all my money. But aside from that, and there's still time, I have made every single mistake, but I've also found ways to make it work. So I want to go through all the different ways you should approach this and not approach it and how to get it right, as well as I will cover some places, well, one place where you can go to get started hiring people as well. So right off the bat, you want to start small and start hourly. I made this mistake a bunch of times where I brought someone on, sometimes someone I knew in real life actually, sometimes someone online like a VA, where I brought them on kind of a 10-hour a week agreement, and I didn't know what I wanted them to do. And it was messed up for a few reasons. So first of all, I felt like I was paying them, and if they weren't getting stuff done or that wasn't a busy week, it really bugged me. I felt like I was losing this money. The other thing is it increased the expense before it was necessary, right? So I try to create busy work. I'm like, all right, I got 10 hours for this person. Maybe you could like go through my home exchange emails and do some stuff like that for me. So it ended up in this situation where I felt like I was wasting money and I was just creating busy work for them. So when you start hourly with no minimum commitment, that is a really good way to do it. The second thing, and this ties in, is you got to trust them, right? Because what I was doing when I started is I brought someone on for like 10 hours a week, but I didn't really trust them. Now, that I don't necessarily mean in terms of like honesty, but in terms of their technical abilities or decision making. So I wouldn't really give them the important stuff, and I'd end up having to kind of teach them everything, and I'd give them these really basic tasks that in my business I don't actually have that many of, so it didn't work very well. What I've learned to do later, more recently in the past year, is just hand over the whole project to someone and say, hey, like with my last assistant, Jenny. Hey, Jenny, if you're watching, Jenny was awesome. I would just say to her stuff like, hey, I'd like to be doing more podcast interviews. Can you put together some information on the best way to do that, and the next steps and what we need to do? And I might give her some tips like, hey, from what I know, this is what we should do, but I would leave the project with her to take on, rather than trying to nitpick every detail and outline everything for her, because then it ends up being a lot more work for me. Now, along that note, one of the things that can hold people back as well is you think, well, it's quicker for me to just do the work than to explain it, right? And this is sometimes true, but you've got to try to think in the long term. Is it quicker for you this one time, or is it quicker for you for all times ever, right? So if it's filling out one form once, maybe it's better to do it yourself. But what a lot of entrepreneurs do, and I'm doing this as well, is you create something called an SOP, or a standard operating procedure. So this means that when I'm training someone to do a task for me, I'm not just talking to them one-on-one. I'm usually making videos or screen recordings where I explain how the task works, what I want done, and all that. And I'll sometimes have a written document as well. And then if that person quits, I can then have that same document to give to the next person, and it really minimizes the training time. And actually, this was amazing when Jenny had to quit. She was actually a doctor, and she got a placement in a hospital. I asked her, and she actually put together a 23-page training guide for the next person. How cool is that? So she helped create the systems, and I'm going to talk more about that, about the kinds of people you can hire, those who create systems and those who follow them. But she actually helped create the systems and the processes and then documented it to help train the new person. So that was amazing. So how do you find somebody like a Jenny? Well, let me just say off the bat that it might take some time. Jenny was not the first person that I hired and will not be the last. And so what I found works really well is to start small. There can come cases, and this happens in all areas of life from romance to business, where we get really charmed off the bat, right? We meet someone and we think, this person's great. And then they totally flake out and don't follow through. This has happened to me once. I hired this podcast editor, and she came on and we had a great meeting, and she was full of energy and all this. And I was like, this person's awesome. And then she just disappeared. And she's taking other jobs on Upwork. but just disappeared from me. And this is actually somewhat common. There are certain countries I won't name that might start with Lillipines, or sound like Lillipines, I should say, that I've had more of these experiences with, but I've also hired great people from the country that sounds like Lillipines. So it's not something like everyone there is at all. There's some great people I've hired there, but I have found that there are certain people online where they basically are they're always looking for the next opportunity, and they often only work when they need money. So in this person's case, she had a great Upwork profile, all this experience, and what she did, I noticed, is she never accepted the job right away. So that means I couldn't leave bad feedback because she hadn't kind of accepted the job after we'd been meeting and talking and that. Anyhow, this is why it's great to start small, because if this is going to be a person who just wants to make a bit of money and then quit again, or they have this habit of flaking out or changing positions whenever they can earn more money, then you can spot that. In the case of Jenny, actually, the way we started was with the most basic of work, which was transcribing. So I had her helping edit the captions on my YouTube videos, these videos, and doing some transcription work as well. And then I noticed, like, I really liked her attitude. She was really proactive. She mentioned things that she could do, like, oh, do you want me to do this or improve this? And I just started asking if she could do other work. And it grew into basically a full VA position where she was doing just anything that I wanted. And that started with really basic work, and that allowed me to see that she was responsible, she was smart, she was proactive, and from there it grew. So I would really recommend starting with something small. This way you keep your costs down, you get to test the person out, and you also don't end up with that problem I mentioned at the start of the video where you get someone for like 10 hours, but you don't really know what they should do yet, and then you end up with some problems there as well. So I want to mention that there are really two approaches to hiring people. And I'm going to just break these into smart and repetitive. And what I mean by that is, in the case of someone like Jenny, she was actually really smart. I mentioned she became a doctor. And in that case, what I liked about her is she was able to like take on a whole project on her own and also develop the processes and help me basically like get my shit together in terms of how things worked. And so if you're someone that's not great at like systems and organizing and all that, like maybe me, you might find that really helpful, bringing someone on who can kind of help you create those processes and understand what you need and then make it happen. Now, I have another friend who's way better at outsourcing than me, and he is all about the systemization, and he actually prefers to hire people who aren't that smart and will just follow the processes. So he has a guide of exactly what he wants done, and he just says, do this. Fill it in, don't use your intuition, just do what we want and get it done and keep doing that work. And he's had really good luck with that as well. It's two different ways of outsourcing. One is kind of bringing someone on who's going to have a bit of their own opinions and look for ways they can help in your business and that. But the downside with that person is they'll often get bored with repetitive work. So if it's the same thing every week, they're probably going to get bored and quit or find another job. And they may not always be that good at following instructions. So sometimes with these people, they miss some details in that because they're thinking more about your big picture stuff, right? And how they can improve other parts of the business, and they miss some important details. Windows closing and opening there. If you saw me, get scared. That's what's going on. So in terms of these two types of people, you can look at hiring both potentially or going through phases. So it might make sense to start off with someone who can help you figure out those processes. They might be someone who's a little more expensive, a little more experienced, and they can help you figure that out. And then you can hire someone maybe cheaper to just keep doing the repetitive work and keep that up. Or if you have a few things that you do consistently, they're a bit of repetitive tasks and you know how you want them done, then think about hiring someone to just do those and write up a SOP, a standard operating procedure of just how you want it done, what it looks like, and then train them on that and have them take over that and start with one task, and then you can add more and more and more as you get to know the person and figure out basically, are they a good fit or are they not? Now, what kind of a friend would I be if I left you just with that without telling you actually how to hire someone? So let's get into that. In terms of where to hire someone, Upwork tends to be where I go. I don't necessarily love it as a company. They take 20% of the freelancer's income for the first $500 they earn, and they basically become a monopoly and keep raising their rates. I don't like them, but I'm familiar with them. They're easy and they have a huge amount of freelancers on them. There are other sites as well. There's a site People Per Hour, which tends to be a little more expensive of people. And then there's also some sites I will link to below because I forget the URLs, but for specific areas. So There's a job board for hiring in Eastern Europe. There's a job board for hiring in the Philippines. And this way, if you want to post classified and go that way, where you pay for the classified, but you don't pay part of the hourly to a company like Upwork, that could be a better way to do it. If you're just starting, I would say get someone on Upwork and go hourly. And just to get started, because it's way less hassle. They handle the money, the invoicing, all that. But over time, as you get better at it and you want to hire someone to stay with you for a while, maybe someone who's doing 20 hours a week, then probably look at one of these job boards to get someone there. So in terms of getting the right person, first of all, sell the job. One of the biggest mistakes I used to make, and a lot of people make with trying to hire like a virtual assistant, is they don't treat them like a real person. They put up a job like, hey, I want this work done. $4 an hour, come do it. No one wants to work for you for that, right? Would you apply for that job? Of course not. So you gotta sell the job, write the job. And this applies to hiring in all cases. Sell the job, write about how awesome it will be, how you're not a douchebag, how it's gonna be fun, or they'll learn a lot, or it will be great, or whatever it is. Sell the job. Write up a really good description. Write about what you do or your company does. This is a perk for me because my material is, I think, pretty entertaining and often about freelancing. So freelancers tend to want to work for me, where they're like, oh, I'd love to edit those videos or do this kind of work because I actually enjoy the content. It's a lot better than doing some boring work for someone. So you write up the awesome job post, then you need to test. I suggest 2 to 3 tests within the hiring process. One is in your description. So your job description, your post, is put some kind of test to right away screen people out. So say something like, hey, in the first paragraph of your cover letter, be sure to mention your favorite type of cactus or whatever. Something just to know if people have read the job description. Because on a site like Upwork, maybe 2/3 of the responses you get are generic posts that they just copy and paste. And I instantly get rid of those people because they're just not putting in any kind of effort. The next test you can go about and do would be some kind of a task to actually see how well they perform something. Depending on what you're hiring them for, test for that. So if you're looking for someone who just follows instructions and will follow your SOP, then give them a really detailed set of instructions and give them a task and see if they follow them exactly. If you're looking for someone who's sort of proactive and going to think for themselves, then give them something a little more creative where they have to figure out a few things and you can test their ability to think critically and think for themselves, and then give them that kind of task. A test is so much better than a conversation. Even huge corporations who spend millions of dollars training in HR, learning how to hire, they have something like a 50% mishire rate. So talking to someone, the interview, it's great to do, but I've actually been getting better hires the less I'm doing interviews and just focusing on kind of tasks and communication in that, or like text communication. Before, when I was interviewing people, I found that I would just like them. So I'd be like, oh yeah, this person seems good, but I wouldn't have any sense. Even though I've interviewed before, I've read books on it, I have some experience with it, I had no real way to judge if they're actually going to be good at the job. So give them some kind of a task, and then after that, maybe you have a third test. So maybe that's a way to narrow it down to your final few people, and then you can have another project you have them do, or do like a probation period for the first month where you're just feeling out how well they do stuff. Again, if you're starting out with just a single general task that they do for you, that's a test in itself, right? With Jenny, she started doing transcription work, she did that well, and then that proved she could do other stuff, or at least that was sort of like a test to know we can go on with other work. Just remember that hiring and finding that right person takes time. Do not expect it to be overnight success, but once you get someone in the right fit, it's amazing how much time it frees up for you and how much it can benefit your business. So be willing to put in the time, treat it like an experiment. Know that you might have to hire 4 or 5 people over the next year to get that perfect person, but once you do, it will be amazing. And know that you need to grow and learn just as much as getting the right person. That learning how to hire someone, how to manage, give instructions, that takes time as well. And to my friends in the country that kind of sounds like Philippines, I love you. I just was mentioning before a few of my own experiences, but I've also had great experiences hiring people from your country, and your president is hilarious, and I love everything he says. Thanks for watching these videos. If you are a freelancer, entrepreneur, someone working for yourself, be sure to subscribe to the channel because there are lots of upcoming videos on building your team, on sales, on growing your business, and all kinds of good stuff. So catch you in another video soon.